Introduce our keynote speaker, Craig Pelnar. And his title is The Importance of Finding a Fit, in the Job Search. He's a human specialist generalist for a Milwaukee manufacturer for over 16 years, outplacement counselor for a number of years, and he now owns his own firm in consulting. So I will ask Craig to come up. Craig, come up. And,
Okay, thank you. And Charlie, can you hand these out, if you don't mind?
Yep.
Okay. Alrighty. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for making it. And with just a quick comment on the weather, as far as I'm concerned, this is okay because you don't have to shovel cold. Just remember that. Welcome. I'd like to, before we start, if we could just go around the room and could you just tell me what your background is, accounting, human resources, engineering, or whatever, so I can get a feel. Let's start with this table over here, if you don't mind. I got your names, I can see those. So what's your background?
Retail.
Okay.
Law enforcement.
Oh, okay. All right.
Biological research.
Okay.
Manufacturing planning.
All right.
Well, I guess I'm a recent college graduate, sort of marketing.
So you can do everything.
I guess so at this point.
Remember, with college graduates, what you learned after you know it all that counts. Just keep that in mind. So, okay. Okay.
Formerly economics, now in health.
Okay.
Horticulture.
Okay.
Education.
All right.
Education. Higher ed administration.
Okay.
Finance accounting.
All right. Lady in the corner. Okay.
Operations and materials management.
All right. And,
Human resources.
okay, great. Thanks very much. Now, you didn't hear everybody in education, everybody in manufacturing, everybody in law enforcement, everybody in retail. A variety of backgrounds, a variety of things, and whether you end up getting into that again with your new job, who knows. But my topic today is fit. And I always call this the good F word because it's so important. And I think that to give you an idea of where I got my ideas on the topic of fit, let me give you a little background on myself. I'm a lifelong Milwaukee resident, born and raised here. Education, parochial, grade school, and high school. Got a degree from UWM, major in industrial relations back then, which is now human resources. And I was very lucky to get my first job at a Milwaukee manufacturer here in town. I was the first HR manager they had. I was there for 16 years. Did all the hiring, firing, union negotiations, safety, health, first aid, affirmative action, you name it, I did it. Excellent training ground for a kid right out of college. Back in April of 1990, I went in for my 16-year review, came out with a bullet hole right about here. Corporate reorganization, position eliminated. Goodbye, see ya. The irony of this whole thing is my seniority day was April 1st, which is April Fool's Day, which if you know me, everybody says that's very, very appropriate. So every year I'd get fired. My boss would sit me down and say, Craig, you're fired. Okay, then he'd give me a raise. That was his April Fool's joke. Well, the last one in 1990, he did it again, only this time I didn't get a raise. And I realized he wasn't fooling, because I thought he was kidding me. He actually gave me an envelope that had my severance benefits in it, and I said, oh my gosh, I got props this year. This is really cool. So it took maybe about 3 minutes, and the last 15 seconds, I finally looked at his face and I said, jeepers, he's serious. I'm not working anymore. I took it pretty hard because I was gonna have 43 years in that place. That was gonna be my job until I retired. All right, I missed that by 27, so I realized I'm not a futurist, okay? Thankfully, I got some severance. Part of the severance was having outplacement at a place out in Brookfield. And I was therefore doing whatever I could do to get a job. But I looked at it, I said, I've been in HR, I know how to hire, I know, how the process goes. I don't really need this outplacement. But I figured, hey, the company's paying for it, I might as well take advantage of it. So I went out there. And it was a manufacturers association, one of the largest in the United States, that was putting it on. And I fell in love with the concept of outplacement. And back, about 5 or 6 months into doing it, they asked me to come on as a counselor. So I literally left there one Friday as a client, came back Monday as an employee. That was pretty cool. I was there for 20 years. I did outplacement for groups, I did outplacement for individuals. I probably over the years have serviced a couple thousand clients. All different walks of life, all different ages, all different backgrounds. You name it, as far as jobs were concerned, I helped them. Now, for those of you who are familiar with outplacement, fine, but for those of you who are not, outplacement is not, first of all, a recruiter. I'm not a headhunter. I'm not somebody who's going to sit there and say, oh, go out for these interviews, and then when you get a job, I get a piece of whatever your salary is going to be. Outplacement is working with people from basically soup to nuts to get you ready to do the job. Whether it's working with references, the interview itself, interviewing techniques, correspondence, follow-up, career change, anything that you need to have, moral support, mental support, emotional support, that's all part of the thing. So it's kind of a coaching, counseling type thing, not a recruiting thing per se. So I got in there, and like I said, I was very blessed to be there 20 years, and back late 2010, they had a change in direction. So again, I found myself on the outside looking in. 2 jobs in a 30-some-year career, both of them lost due to corporate reorganization, position eliminated. So I kind of figured the second one was coming. The first one, like I said, I just sat there and went, like, oh my gosh. But the second one, I could kind of feel the tension mounting that this was going to happen. So made some steps to do what I could do in the event that it did happen. So January 1st of 2011, 1111, just like Oprah, I started my own business. Now, unlike Oprah, I did not get a $267 million check from Discovery. I'm still waiting for that, by the way. I figure it's coming one of these days. But I started my own group, Counseling and Outplacement Group, LLC, or COG for short, COG. And I did it with the idea that I was going to continue what I had done for 20 years in outplacement as an employee of somebody, now doing it on my own. And God's been very, very good to me. Had a good year last year. This year starting out a little slower, but I have faith that it's going to keep going and have the opportunity to help as many people as possible, because that's my goal. My goal is to help people. Most outplacement clients we would get because companies who let them go would sponsor the cost of the outplacement to give them that service. I can do it that way, but I also do what I call retail. If somebody wants to do outplacement, you've got my business cards and whatever. You see the website, you can go on there. I have what I call retail packages for people who are not sponsored by companies, and it's not something where you have to have $1 million to get outplacement help, so just keep that in mind too. So I can work with people who are coming from a company, which I have. I've also worked with people who are coming just knocking on the door saying, hey, I need help. So that's a little background with regards to where I'm coming from. The idea of fit is very, very important in your job search. Now, I'm sure you've had speakers over the months who talk about the mechanics of things. Resume, cover letter, interview, networking, that kind of stuff. Some of the mechanical things you have to do. You listen to the Craig before me talk about how many contacts to make, how to do this, how to do that. Fit is not something you can put in a formula, not something you can put in an equation. It's using your heart and using your head. It's an emotional thing, and everybody will have a different idea as to the concept of fit. I find that kind of cool because basically in your job search, whatever you're looking for, whatever you're looking to get reemployed and doing and getting securing a job, you're going to have a successful job search if 2 things are met. You get a job that you can do or that you can be trained to do if you're changing careers. And the second thing is fit. That's your entire job search if you think about it. If you distill it down to the bare bones, you got to have a job that you can do or be trained to do, and the fit's got to be there. We'll talk about later where if you have one of the two, how do you deal with that? But for the most part, an ideal situation will have both aspects where you'll say, yes, this is it. You got to have the right fit. When I was in HR, one of the things I looked for when I hired somebody was fit. Would they fit in? How many times have you heard that? He didn't fit in, or she didn't fit in, or I didn't fit in. Same thing happens from a hiring standpoint. I may have had it down to 1 or 2 people and say, which one's the best fit? Because the job level, the job expertise may be the same. They may have the same skills. Now, what's the difference? The fit may be the difference. One may be a better one than the other. I've also let people go for lack of fit. Sometimes what you hire is not what you end up getting, or what you think you hire is not what you end up getting. And that becomes evident as the months wear on and the veneer starts cracking. You realize that the person you thought they were, they aren't. So sometimes you have to make that decision to let people go, not because of attendance or lack of skill, but the fit's just not there. And I've had people quit because they say, Craig, Fit's just not there. I just don't feel comfortable. Everybody knows what fit is, but it's awfully hard to define. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we're talking about fit and in your job search. There's a personal fit. You can have good friends. You can have very, very good friends versus acquaintances. You can know somebody who are twins or triplets. You think one's the greatest thing in the world, greatest person in the world, the other one who is basically a carbon copy, at least physically, of the other one, you can't stand them. Why? It's because of fit or lack of fit. Okay? Same thing versus a friend versus a soulmate. Same thing. You could have somebody who you like their brother, but you love the other brother or sister or whatever. It's a matter of fit. It's something that you really can't put your hands around and say, oh, there it is, or there it isn't. Job search, you're also got to have that fit. And it's got to be on a couple of different levels. The fit, and this includes the two things I mentioned earlier, doing a job or being able to do it as well as fit. But the job duties, obviously, you have to be able to do them or be willing to be trained to do them or feel that you have the capacity to be trained. That's positive. That's very, very important. What about the company personality? I have a very strong faith system, and there are certain industries that there's no way I would ever work for. Is it tempting at times if that's the only person who's knocking on your door saying, hey, come on in for an interview? Sure it is. But for me, if you look at this, you say, gee, I don't know if what the company stands for or what kind of a product or what kind of a service they provide, that may not be a good fit for me. You know, the ideal thing is that you're not embarrassed about where you work. Where do you work? Oh, I work at... Next question? No. It's nice if you can say, I work at such and such, and be proud of it. But if they do something that from a moral, ethical, religious standpoint you don't feel comfortable with, that's a fit issue or lack of fit, okay? Now, this is not going to be revolutionary, but what about the boss? I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come in and say, well, you know, it's tough to be out of work, but you know, my boss and I, there just wasn't a good fit. Or many times it happens, they were there for 25 years. 24 and a half years, everything was okay. 6 months ago, they got a new boss. And guess what? They end up talking to me. Company goes out of their way to hire somebody, especially if they use a recruiter to get them. They have to pay a fee. They may have relocated this person. And they come in, and let's say there's a oil and water no fit between you and that new manager. Folks, guess who's going to go? It's not going to be that guy they put all the money in. It's going to be you. And that's probably the number 2 reason for clients, my getting clients in my house placement. Number 1 is economics. We have to cut back. We have to reduce our workforce. We have to drop a division, do this or do that economically. We're not doing well, whatever. The second thing is a lack of fit, usually with a new boss. Okay? Co-workers, different thing, but bosses, the fit has to be there. Co-workers, as I mentioned, it's there. If the co-worker's been there for a lot of years and you haven't, the company may look at it and say, well, Larry's been here for 35 years and this other guy's only been here a couple. We put them in a new department and together and they're not very good fit. They may let you go because you have less seniority. Okay? But all of those things, whether it's your job duties, your personality, the company personality, the product and the service, the boss and the coworkers, the job fit has to be good in order to be successful. Now, easy to talk about a good fit versus a bad fit. How do you figure out what is a good fit? Or conversely, what is a bad fit? How many people in their right mind will go to an interview in their pajamas? Scratching their head, hair all messed up, and look like they just rolled out of bed, literally. Very few people do that. Now, you want to make a first impression? Yeah, you're going to, but it's not going to be a good one. Okay? When anybody is at this podium, we're talking to you in these groups, or any of these groups, I used to do roundtables weekly at my place when I was outplacement counselor. We talked about you got to bring your A game. You got to be on top of it. If you got a cold or you got allergies, you don't feel well. I didn't do real well in that interview. I didn't feel I hit the mark. Yeah, you have days like that, but for the most part, you got to try to do your best. Well, most companies will try to put their best foot forward as well. Okay, so if you're looking at whether it's a good fit or a bad fit, you have to keep your eyes open. First thing you can do before you even have your first interview, your first face-to-face, even your first phone screen, do some research on the company. Now, in the old days, 100 years ago, when I got out of college, a web was something that was in the corner made by a spider. We didn't have websites. That was, basically, like I said, where the spiders were. We didn't have all this electronic stuff. To me, a pager was high tech, and when they had fax machines, I could never figure out how they could take the paper, roll it thin enough to get through those wires. To this day, it still amazes me. That was high tech 100 years ago, not anymore. Nowadays, if you want to do research, I mean, I'm old enough that we used to use encyclopedias from home. Nowadays, kids go, what? What are those? I just saw that Encyclopedia Britannica, they're not making them anymore. It's all digital now, it's all DVDs, whatever. So you can do research like you could never do before. I advise you to do that. Not just go to the website, because guess what? That might be slightly biased. If you're looking to buy a product, you look and see if there are any reviews. Not that you have to take them as gospel, but it gives you an idea of what to look out for. Do the same thing with a company. Do your homework. When you're interviewing, phone screen, face-to-face, second interview, third interview. Some interviews, the interview process will be, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? It may take, 4, 5, 6 interviews. When you have a phone screen, see how you feel when you're on the phone with that company representative. Now, it could be a 19-year-old who's just asking you questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And you can hear him or her just checking out the answers or writing stuff down. Do they have it where you don't have a lot of background noise in there so that you can really concentrate on talking to the person? Does it sound like that person's prepared? Okay. When you get a face-to-face, take a look at the building when you drive up. Not always a 100% indicator that it's a great place or a bad place. The place I worked when I was HR manager was not in the garden spot of Milwaukee. But we were kind of a rose among the thorns. We had a very beautiful facility, and the neighborhood wasn't that good, but the facility was great. And people would go, where is it? Oh my gosh. I said, well, wait till you get down here. And people were just amazed. We didn't have graffiti. We didn't have broken windows. I had a owner of the company that really took pride in the building, and it showed. But some places aren't quite that way. Look in the lobby. Look out in the shop. If it's a factory situation, are you running through the shop? Do you see rats the size of small ponies running by? That one's got a saddle on it. Holy smokes. You look at stuff like that and you say, okay, look at if you happen to walk by, if they have a luncheon area or they have a break room. See what it looks like. And this isn't quite, hopefully, as prevalent as it was back in the day. But when you take a walk out in the shop in the old days, you always see a bunch of girly calendars and all that stuff. Well, if they still got it today, folks, that could be an issue. Okay, so look at that. You can get a feel for that fit, if you will, just by keeping your eyes open. I find even coming in as an outplacement counselor, if I'm on site for a termination where I talk to the person right after they've been let go, I'm taken to a room, I'm taken here, I'm taken there, I'm always looking around. Now, I'm tall enough I can look over cubicles and this kind of stuff, but it's interesting to see what companies have that really isn't supposed to be seen, maybe because I'm taller than most, but just looking at what people say. Do people say hello to you? Or people look at you like you're some sort of social leper where they go, ooh, unclean, I'm not going to look at you. How do they greet you? How does the receptionist treat you? That's all part of fit. Unless you're doing a job where you're just going to be cloistered in a corner, sitting at a computer, you don't care about anybody or anything, then it might not make a difference. But if you have any kind of social abilities or you want to interact with people and nobody will even say hello to you or they walk around you like you got some sort of a disease, that might be something to look at as far as fit goes. So keep that in mind. Now, once you get to that point, eventually you will make a decision. Yeah, this looks like a good fit, or nah, this isn't the fit I'm looking for. If you decide that it's a good fit, don't stop after you make that decision. Keep looking, keep assessing. Even to the point of how they handle making you an offer. I've had clients call me or talk to me and say, Craig, I'd say, how'd the interview go? This was your last one, right? Yeah, how'd it go? I think it went okay. What do you mean you think? Did you get an offer? I think so. Wait a minute, either you did or you didn't. And they did not make, it wasn't formal, it wasn't followed up in writing. I mean, the protocol wasn't there. And some of these guys, some of my clients actually didn't even know if they had a job. That to me is pretty sad. Because I know when I was hiring somebody, if I wanted to make them an offer, now I may call them on the phone and make them an offer, but I always follow up with something in writing. Now today it might be an email, but in the old days it was something that would be like verifying your order, something online. They always say, print this page out now, or you got something to hang on to. I would always do that, okay? So keep that in mind when you're looking at the good fit. You're always going to keep assessing. Now, let's say it's the other side of the coin. This is, oh my gosh, this place is terrible. I wouldn't have my worst enemy working here. this place is a real rat's nest. What do I do? Well, you have to be careful to not let it go too far. If you sit there and you say, okay, well, I got nothing else going on, and don't get me wrong, if you get a chance to interview with any company, it's always good practice. It's always good practice from the good side, like, hey, I really handled those questions well, or either you didn't handle the questions well and you got some homework to do, or they answered very weird questions, you weren't prepared, or they weren't prepared. But every interview you have, I guarantee, will be an experience, good or bad. So if it is not a good fit, if it's not something that you don't really want to pursue, and you're afraid that, wow, what am I going to do? Because I don't want to sit there and just, say no, and I don't have anything else on my plate. If you honestly feel in your heart of heart that it's not a good fit, stop the process. And if you want to know how to get out of it, I'll give you a way of doing it. You can write. I would suggest write as opposed to an email. Get a hold of the HR person and say, look, I'm interviewing for such and such a position. I've had X number of interviews, and looking at the information I've received, as well as the contacts I've made in with your company, I feel that there was not a good fit between my requirements and your qualifications, that sort of thing. So it's something where if you want to say, I don't feel it's the fit that I need, and again, you thank them for their time and you move on. Okay. Now people may tell you you're nuts. Are you crazy? You had a job. You had an offer and you walked away. Are you crazy? Well, they may think you're crazy, but there again, the fit thing also is here. It's not necessarily all up here. And if you honestly feel it, and I've had people say, I feel real creeped out about this job. Why? Because the HR guy reminds me of my ex. Now, they're probably the only person that can say that. And they're probably the only person who get creeped out that way. But if they really feel that every time they see this guy, they think their ex is coming after them, wow, I think it's time to pull the pin, okay? Again, fit is you guys will laugh, but you'd be surprised. It's a very, very personal thing. Now, that being said, I'm a very practical person. You probably saw about after 3 minutes up here, I'm pretty much what you see is what you get. I don't have a lot of hidden agendas and any pretexts, but I do have a practical side. And the practical side regarding fit is what I call an emergency option. Now, an emergency option is just that. If you smell smoke, you're not necessarily going to go pull the fire alarm right away. You might find out a guy's lighting a cigarette or a kid started a fire in a wastebasket or something. But if you really feel that from the standpoint of looking at this position, it's not a good fit. Now what do I do? Look at your own situation. You're out of unemployment. Your accounting, your bank account's down to nothing. You're looking at the dog as the next couple of meals. Okay, and you realize you have to do something, you might want to consider taking a position that's not a good fit. Now notice lightning did not strike me dead. It can be done, okay? But here's the caveat. If you take a position that is not a good fit, but you take it because from a practical standpoint you have to, there are two obligations you have to meet. One is if you say, I'll take the job, whatever it is, you need to do as good a job as you can, that you give them a good bang for their buck and you give them whatever they're going to pay you, even if it's half of what you were making. You want to make sure that you're doing a good job for them so nobody can say, well, the guy's just leaking off, he's not doing a really good job. No, you're going to do the best job you can. Even if the training for the job is, would you like fries with that? Or paper or plastic? Do the best job you can in any job. I've told my kids that from little on, and thankfully they paid attention at least to that. Okay? But here's the thing, keep looking. People sit there and say to me, I'm working at Pick and Save, I'm working at Lowe's, I'm working at Home Depot, and I need to look for a job, but I don't have any time to look. I can't interview. Yes, you can. I can't tell you how many times I interviewed people after their job was over. Or Saturdays. I don't think I ever did any Sundays, but I was willing to do that if I had to. If somebody really wants to talk to you, if somebody really wants to interview with you, they'll find a way. I've interviewed people 5:30 in the morning before work. I've interviewed during the noon hour where they come in with their tie flying over their shoulder because they raced in, half an hour, boom, back out. I've talked to them after work. Like I said, Saturdays, whatever. Didn't make any difference to me because I knew that the job they had, I didn't want to get them in trouble by making them late. So if we had to talk before, after, during, whatever, we would do it. Or if they took a day of vacation, I'd try to make myself available that day so I could accommodate them. But you got to remember that you keep looking. Hopefully, this emergency option is not going to be a long-term situation. Now, people say, whoa, it's going to look bad on my record. You know, I was only there for 3 months, 4 months, and I leave, whatever. I got news for you. The days of anybody hiring somebody for 40, 45, 50 years are pretty much gone. When I lost my first job after 16 years, I told my folks. They were both alive at the time. My mother was pretty easy, she just cried. My father said, what'd you do? What'd you do? Now, this is from a guy who worked 33 years at A.O. Smith, took early retirement, and to him, and he told me this.
Trained to do, educationally trained, certified in, something you've done for 20 years, that's what you want to do. Good example would be a CPA. I've always done numbers, I love numbers. I love the smell of black ink and red ink. Okay, fine, that's all they want to do. That, their next job is going to be a position or career. However, talking about this emergency option, talking about maybe changing, I think maybe I want to change career, I want to do something different. You may end up taking what I call a JOB. And that's something where the training may be. Would you like fries with that or pay for the class? Maybe a lightweight job because you need the money. I had a gentleman who had a master's degree, sales and marketing. He ended up taking a job at Home Depot. Thankfully, he liked the lunch. But I'll tell you, the training curve wasn't really long for him. And that was about 7, 8 years ago. He's still there today. He has another position, but they said, you know, Steve, you're here every day, you're here on time, you can have all the hours you want. So for him, it's a great job because he was able to get a position or a career, but it didn't pay for beans. And he needed X amount of money, but this was the job of his dreams. So you know what he did? He took it. But he's got Home Depot on the side. And there's no shame in it. I just saw him about 3 weeks ago. He's happy as a clam. So remember the difference between a JOB and a position. Now, remember, and I'm giving you a couple things that aren't necessarily fit, but I'll just cram up a few more things in here. Your job search, I talked about, you know, to have an ideal job, it's going to be a job that you can do or be trained to do and fit. Regarding job search, everybody's in a job search from what I understand here in this room. It's two things. It's exposure and it's survival. Now, the exposure talked about, you know, how many contacts do you make? Do you send a thank you note? Do you do this? Are you visible? Do people know you're looking for work, or are you the best kept